you everyone for joining us. Today's session is on quick and flexible teaching strategies in this modality, in really any modality, but in kind of the flexible style that we have going on in the fall. So where we came from and where we are. So as instructors, as teachers, we have to think about what teaching strategies we're used to using, whether it's in the classroom or if we have taught in a flexible modality before. What's working and what isn't in the fall based on what technology you're using or maybe the course you're teaching, whether it's an upper division or lower division, high enrollment, low enrollment class. It just kind of depends where you are and what teaching strategies you're using in that. So we'll keep these questions in mind as we go throughout the session today. And then what impact does modality have on my teaching strategy? If I'm, used to doing a discussion in class, can I change that into a online discussion? And how would that work? How is that facilitated in a dialogue asynchronously? So we'll talk a little bit about that today. How can I give the students the best experience in this current modality, whichever one you're in? So it looks like we have most doing live online lecture and high flex. So we'll talk a little bit about those today. And so kind of, we understand that we're in this modality, it was selected maybe for you or by the department or however it came to you. And how can we use our techniques to give the students the best experience possible given the situation we're in? And then how do I prepare myself for teaching? So what do I need to do as an instructor to prepare myself to teach in this modality? And then for my students. So I think, students may not have ever taught in a, live online class. Maybe they took an online class, maybe they took a face-to-face class, but this high flex, maybe flexible modality is new to them. So how do we prepare our students with our expectations that they come to class at a certain time, that they log in, that they participate? How are we telling our students what we expect of them? And then what resources are available? There's the tech events training, which are incredible from the OIT, and we have our professional development sessions every Monday. We also have the Faculty Lounge Live that occurs every month, if you're interested in that. So there's a ton of resources out there. Of course, the Keep Teaching and Keep Learning websites are also available for resources. So as we're going through this session today, let's keep these questions in mind. And if anything comes up on, how do I change this particular teaching strategy that I usually do in the classroom, or if you have something that has worked, even in the first week, I know it's probably a lot of experimentation right now of, what works and what doesn't, and getting that student feedback. So if you have any advice for everyone on here, that would be great as well. And we would love to hear that. So for the modalities by the registrar's office, so I got all this information directly from their website. I put the website link there, and I can also put it in the chat. And this describes what modalities are being offered right now, and a little description of what the details are, what the main thing is, and how students see it when they register for the course. So there's the fully online and the online live lecture. These are probably the most popular right now. We have the fully online where it's 100% online. They don't necessarily have specific meeting times scheduled in the registrar's course schedule calendar, but they can have live optional sessions and recorded times. The online live lecture is more of that high flex, it's fully online, but there's this set time where students have to join in a synchronous way, kind of like what we are doing now, where they have to join at 12:15 every morning. So then there's the mostly mixed online. And so this has some portion of the class delivered online, some portion in person. And if you're in engineering and business, you may have additional modalities, which are indicated by the registrar on that website. So that's a little bit about the modalities. And so thinking about what you're teaching and how these impact your strategies. So regardless of really what teaching modality you're in, communication is probably the biggest thing for students right now. I know we're all trying to scramble to get our materials modified for the new modality, but they really may not have any expectation or knowledge of what they're supposed to do. So, whether it's a fully online class and there are no meeting times, just communicating to them that there are no meeting times is the fully online course, or if it's this high flex, I have how many seats left are in class, having that dialogue with the students of what the expectations are is really important just so that they don't miss something. So knowing what times, dates, what they're expected to do in Canvas, that they're supposed to log into Canvas. If they're in this high flex modality and they plan to sign up for all the in-person sessions per se, what are the expectations of them in Canvas, if there are any. So just kind of making sure that there's some sort of communication plan or a set of expectations for your students, regardless of modality. Welcoming students to the course. I think just knowing, especially if they're not attending a physical class, knowing that the class has started is probably just a good step. Like, this is the first week, here are my expectations, this is who I am, this is what we're going to learn. Kind of just helps orient the student that their class has started. Again, these modalities are probably new words to students and to us, right? So kind of explaining what you mean by a live online lecture or a high flex class. Will better understand kind of what that means for your particular class. They could have multiple online live class courses or high flex courses, but each faculty member has potentially a different way of handling it. So making sure that you have your expectations clear for your class to the students is super important. Providing guidance on how to get started. So some students may not know, to click the get started button or to complete the syllabus quiz or even to view the syllabus in Canvas if they're used to getting a hard copy in person. So just kind of orienting them, like your syllabus is there, the week 1 readings are up. This is, please have them read before class. Those types of things will really help when you're trying to communicate with your students. Providing virtual office hours. So this is something that maybe you have done before, but this is the way Cisco WebEx has made it easy. If you have that in your office hour settings in Canvas, Zoom also has a personal meeting option if you're more comfortable with Zoom. And just having students, if it is a fully online class, or the students are in class and they want just some extra time, having those virtual office hours kind of gives them the ability to kind of ask those questions that maybe they're a little nervous about the modality or kind of how the course will be run, gives them that opportunity. Being present. So knowing that, you are behind the screen, there's someone there putting the material there, recording lectures, answering discussion responses, providing feedback. Just because the course is online doesn't mean that there's no faculty interaction. In essence, it's even more related to the content and engaging with the students and really being in a dialogue with them online. And so kind of making sure that your presence is known throughout the Canvas course, regardless of modality again. And acknowledge comments and post announcements. So even if it's like once a week, kind of orienting the student, okay, this week, please read chapter 2. We're going to go over the group project in class, bring any questions, just kind of giving them some to-do action items for that week. If it's an announcement or an email, whichever you prefer, will definitely help kind of structure the student's experience. And then be flexible. I know we talked about this. If you are a frequent flyer with us in these sessions, being flexible with your students and yourself during this time is definitely something that we want to encourage. Students and ourselves, we're trying to make sure that we are, excellent. I don't know if you can hear my cat in the background, but things are going to happen. And we just kind of have to roll with whatever is happening in the moment.
I have a couple of questions in the chat.
Oh, perfect.
From Dr. Candace Cunningham. Is hybrid different from high flex? And then in the same vein, from Dr. Rebecca Anderson, I'm doing both some sessions on campus and some online. Is that officially high flex?
Yeah, so that's a really great question. I think high flex. I went to the. I don't know if anyone else has attended the high flex training from OIT, but I was able to attend last week. And high flex has those three modalities, which is they have the three types of classrooms. They have the in class recordings where there's no students. They have the students in there with the recording and the Zoom and then they have just a Zoom room. So I think those three are considered the high flex. High flex is really a theoretical framework that has specific structures and setups. I think here, according to my trainings that I did with OIT, it's about having Zoom available for your students live and having some live component. So that's what I would consider high flex based on the training that I went through with them. Basically, you have students can sign up for like an in-person class session, or you can use a certain type of classroom that they have set up where you can record your lectures and talk to students. So I think that's what I would consider high flex. I hope that answers the question. Oh, and hybrid and high flex, we do have quick plug here for the Flex Online Teaching Orientation. And in the first module of that workshop, we really go over what the different definitions of this hybrid, high flex, flipped, gap, mixed online, kind of all the different words that are used to describe what we are currently in the fall. And it really depends on how it's applied. So I do highly recommend if you have questions kind of about the different words that are being used, I would recommend that workshop. It's very helpful.
Dr. Michelle Papania also want to share?
I hope everyone's doing well today. So I just typed in the chat box that I'm actually doing three different types of classes. I do a perspectives in health class that's been fully online. So fortunately, I don't have to do any changes there. And then I do two other classes, one that is essentially a hybrid where we always met once a week and then they had a distance learning component, and then another class that was your traditional live. So in the summer, I did I did the online live lectures for those two classes. And what I noticed is that the presentations were great, except my participation was very low. I get the feeling that students would rather view the recordings at their convenience and not necessarily participate live. So I decided to use Zoom this semester and institute polling questions that I introduce into the lecture. And they're not right or wrong. They're just, to gauge understanding as I go throughout. And then I grant them participation points based upon the number of polling questions that they answer. So if they're there for the whole lecture time and they answer all the polling questions, they get full participation. And I've already noticed, I've got 80% of the class, participating online versus just a handful, coming in and the rest, viewing the recording at their leisure.
I think having that incentive, I'll say, for the student to participate in that live session. And then also giving those who maybe work during that time some other alternative option. I think that's fabulous.
And I believe Dr. Tracy Rubenstein also had something to say.
Hi, this is Tracy. Two things are on my mind. One is I have set up 15-minute one-to-one appointments with my students, and obviously it's taking a good chunk of my time, but they are really appreciating it. So, for anyone that can squeeze that into their schedule, it does seem to really make a difference to them to have just a few minutes to meet with me one on one because they've been thanking me for it. The other thing is that I am finding as a parent that my kids are in public school and they're just starting today. We have been inundated with emails and announcements and notifications. And I don't know if this is also happening with our students. Every time we update something in Canvas or make an announcement or change the due date on something or whatever, that they get just flooded with a notification and an email and a this and a that. And so I don't know if there's, I mean, obviously people can make their own choices about what kind of notifications to receive, but I don't know if we can be a little bit mindful about how we change things in Canvas so that we aren't having our students get a gazillion emails saying this changed and that changed. I don't know if we have control over that, and we may not, but that's just something to think about, that when we send out announcements and whatnot, that it generates a lot of notifications.
Yeah, that's a really, really great point. I'm glad you brought that up because one of the things that we do recommend is that students enable notifications in Canvas, right? So that they get kind of what um, updates that we have. I think one of the, just two things to your points, which were excellent. If for those of you on the call who have maybe 200 students and don't have the time for those 15-minute sessions, in the faculty lab live hybrid that happened a couple weeks ago, Dr. Michelle Vaughn made a really great comment. If you do have a large class, even if you break it up into small groups of 5, so maybe if you don't have that one-on-one capability, but maybe like small group sessions to orient a large class may also help as well. And then in terms of notifications, yeah. So even if you have, I think the one thing that I would do is maybe leave it unpublished until I'm ready and all the material that I want is there for that module, and then publish it, or lock until, using those module edit items, as well as perhaps having a 1-week summary for each class could also be helpful.
I have a hand raised for Dr. Gail Choate.
Hi, I also can claim that doctor title. So, in fact, part of what I wanted to mention to y'all is that I'm a PhD student right now, as well as being an instructor, and I teach 2 of those large classes. So I have almost 250 students altogether, plus my own coursework. And so I just wanted to amplify the comment about being judicious about the emails and notifications that we send. I have instructors who send me, they post an announcement in Canvas, then they email me in Canvas, then they email me outside of Canvas, all about the same thing. And while I appreciate so much their desire to make sure that I get the information, it's overwhelming. And my students tell me the same thing. If they have, I only have 3 courses plus the 2 that I teach. If you're a student with 6 courses and you're getting triplicates of every piece of information, it does really add up. So I just wanted to reiterate the comment about just, yes, communicate, but also be judicious about what we send out to our students. The other thing, I just wanted to ask the question, and I apologize, I don't know which speaker it was that was talking about how she uses polls in Zoom as a way to kind of check on attendance and see who's there. I think that's an awesome approach. My question to her is, are there good reporting mechanisms from Zoom? Because one of the challenges that I'm facing with these large classes is just the tracking of attendance. Right now, it's a very laborious and very manual process. I'm looking for any ideas that are possible on how to shorten that up, how to make that easier. So I'm curious if when she's using the polls in Zoom, especially if they're spread throughout the lecture, if there's some kind of an amalgamation report that easily exports from Zoom into whatever kind of an attendance tracking system that she's using. So those are my comments and my questions. So thank you.
And Gail, I'll jump in on one of the comments in here. After your Zoom session is over, you have the option of going in and the instructor to get, well, first of all, you have the option of saving the chat, and it comes out in a text format. And you also have the option of a report that tells you exactly when every person was in and out of the session. And I have found that very helpful. I don't have anywhere near that many students, but and so I do a fairly good job of keeping track as they come in. But this really gives you exact times and everything on that. So that's one response on that. The other comment on anytime we change something in an assignment, there's a little square down in the lower left that says notify, and I don't ever push the button to notify students of the changes. So those are just a couple of comments based on what we've had.
Perfect. No, that was great. Yeah. So having that communication be concise and maybe choose one. I think what we do in our communication plans, in our template, is we say we're going to be communicated through either the Canvas inbox or via email. So maybe setting that expectation of where to look and where the student should look for your particular communications. That's a really great point. So, some quick things if you are in person and you have some remote options. So, I believe this is still true. So, if not, please correct me. All students have the option to stay home, even if it's an in person class. But if that's the case, having those remote students, giving them the same opportunity to collaborate and contribute to the discussion as those in your in person seats. Some of the things that we came up with were to create a discussion board for before and after each in person class session. One of the reasons that we would recommend this is because sometimes the question that they asked in the chat during the live session maybe didn't get answered, or maybe it just maybe there were too many and it got kind of moved up into the scroll bar. And it's also kind of challenging while you're lecturing to pause, check the chat, come back to what you were talking about in that same spot. So having some sort of plan for that as well. And what that discussion board does is the before class discussion kind of will help gauge kind of where your knowledge is in that particular area. And the after one can also gauge, okay, so they understood that concept, they need a little bit more, maybe I'll review that concept one more time in the next class. So there's multiple benefits for these, not just because of the modality we're in. Something that also came up in that Faculty Lounge Live that we had a couple weeks ago is partnering, which I thought was an incredible idea. I think Rosemary Rayhill came up with this, is if you have like a rotation of students that are coming in class and then some remote, having a partner or, one lead in a group who goes in persons and the people in the remote kind of share notes in case their audio went out or their internet went out or a storm came through. That in-person student can kind of help supplement the notes for the remote students. And then when it's their turn, they can rotate, so on and so forth. That just makes sure that every student is getting the same information and they're collaborating. Ensuring students in the remote session can hear and see you. So one of the tips at the High Flex training session that I went to with OIT was to always check to make sure you can be heard by your remote students kind of before you get started. So even if it's like maybe a short icebreaker or a couple people in the remote session, just say here, just so that there's confirmation that the people on the other end can be heard and that you can hear them. So designating a student leader for your in-class session. I did get to see some of the high flex kind of setups that are in some of the classes, and there's a screen that maybe you have up, whether it's the projector screen or it's the kind of TV screen that you have in the room. Having a student leader for that day be responsible for saying, oh, we have a hand raised in the remote students class. And then setting up a protocol for when you will address those remote student questions and in-person student questions for how that lead for that day can facilitate that dialogue. And then, of course, recording sessions. Recording is, in Zoom, when you set up a recording session, they do have the feature to auto record. I don't know if that feature is in WebEx yet, but just kind of remembering whether you have a sticky note on the side of your computer or an alarm on your phone just to start that recording, or maybe a student to remind you, hit record, just so that there's that consistency for those remote students. So online synchronous, this is where everyone is remote. There's no in-person session, but we're all meeting collaboratively here, kind of like what we're doing now. So for students, making sure that there's some sort of established protocol for student engagement. So will there be a pause for questions or any raised hands? Should they wait until the end for their questions? Things like that, just so they know that they are being heard. So if there is a hand raised, it's acknowledged. Okay, I see your hand. Let me finish the slide and I'll get right back to that, or addressing it right there. Um, Providing information in so pre-recorded lecture videos. And the reason I say this is because I think I have it on a next couple of slides. These sessions fly by. I don't know if it's just for me, but when I'm doing a live session, the time is just so quick. And so if there is like informational concepts that can be explained in a video that you recorded in media site, and have that be like a pre-activity for your live session, and then the live session can be more of a dialogue on what's happening, what are the concepts that they're struggling with, what needs to be reviewed again, can really help with some time. Especially when you have a large online synchronous session, if there are questions or hand raised or a chat going on, that can also take up a lot of your lecture time. A pre-session quiz to gauge the student's understanding. So this is if you need to adjust your teaching practices kind of as you go to see where your students are, if they understood last week and if they're ready to move on to this week. And then kind of like I said, in this live modality, because they do have the opportunity to talk with you, giving them that space to have that dialogue, to have that discussion with you versus explaining concepts, which perhaps can be done in a media site video. But again, some certain concepts do need a live explanation, and I totally understand that. So it's really going to be kind of what you determine can be pre-recorded.
I just wanted to share along. I loved everything so far. It's wonderful. Your comment about providing informational concepts in a pre-recorded lecture. I'm doing a clinical class, and what I did over the summer was I created my own YouTube station, and then not of myself, but I found YouTubes related to assessment and treatment, and I put them in there, and I shared that YouTube channel with the students and said, now you can look this up ahead of time. We'll discuss it in the next session. And that also helps those students that are very anxious and want to look ahead. What's coming? What's coming? They can see, 3 or 4 minute YouTube videos. So I just thought that was a cool thing I discovered.
Exactly that same concept of allowing them to digest the information a little bit before class and then having a discussion about it. And I know that can be hard for large classes, but definitely could help in their understanding. So again, I knew I had this point somewhere down the line is these sessions go by fast. I mean, just right now, we only have 10 minutes left or so. So, it just kind of flies by in these live sessions. So if you have some sort of agenda or having that specific protocol for how you will engage students in a live session will kind of help with that timing. And then asking your students how the sessions are going for them. This was also, I know I keep talking about our Faculty Lounge Live, and I can talk a little bit about what that is for those of you who maybe haven't joined them. It's an open session where it's faculty talking to faculty about what they're experiencing in this modality. And it's really just kind of, what are you doing for this? What are you doing for that? And one of the things that came up in that session was, let's ask them how I'm doing, so that I can change my practice strategies to meet their needs. So if they have, maybe they're saying, I really can't hear you in the remote session, or the equations you're writing on the dot camera, I can't really see. Just getting that feedback from the students can help have them a better experience, and you kind of understanding what they're going through on the other end. So whether it's a Canvas quiz or a survey in Canvas or a Google form, whatever you're comfortable with, getting that student feedback. And maybe not, sometimes you can use a discussion board for this as well. But sometimes students may be a little nervous to share their thoughts. to a group of students versus kind of submitting it in a quiz survey type way. But that would be totally up to you, whichever way you want to go with that. But just getting that feedback kind of early on, so that hopefully, as the weeks progress, we can adjust our practice. Technical issues will happen 100%. They're going to happen. Either, you may forget to hit record. I know that's, I get so excited about what I'm about to cover. The record just kind of goes out the window, and I got to remind myself, the record button is there, and to hit it. And then, connections. I know some people had power outages last night. So if you had a late night class, that could have affected you. With the weather we have, internet can go in and out. So if you can't connect, just communicating to your students, you're trying to connect, the session will be open shortly. They may not be able to connect. So sometimes you actually may have students who cannot connect to the internet for whatever reason. And then having some sort of accommodation for those students during this time. Your video could buffer. So as you're talking, there could be a long pause and then continuing on a concept. So you may have to kind of see what the students are saying in the chat to see if they missed that section, if you need to go over it again. And these are definitely unique circumstances, right? You wouldn't buffer in person. So it's just kind of understanding that these things are going to happen and adjusting for them. And then being kind to yourself and your students. We all are definitely having some sort of new experience during the fall semester. So having that kindness and grace for yourself and your students. And something that we talked a little bit about, we had a student panel right at the end of summer. And something that came to mind is your students could have classes in 4 different modalities that they have to switch throughout the day. So you may, have selected Zoom or WebEx or whichever one you select. I don't even know if Skype is still an option, but having those different meeting types, the students maybe camera or microphone is still in the other program, and it's taking up their camera, so maybe you can't see them, or their microphone, so you can't hear them. So just being aware that they have to change modalities potentially by the hour and 50 minutes to get to the next class. I know a lot of us are using different types of modalities for meetings. And when we get into that meeting and, why isn't my camera working? Oh, it's because I have Zoom open still, right? So just understanding your students are going through that same thing, and kind of working with them in the moment. One thing I did learn at the HighFlex training from OIT is if you go to their OIT help desk page, there's a live chat bot. And they actually have staffed that chatbot. So if you need help in the moment, or your students need help in the moment, I would recommend them go to that chatbot and see kind of what situations that they can provide guidance to or understand kind of what's happening. And that in real time assistance is really, really helpful. So that is just one quick tip that I learned in that session. If anyone has anticipated or faced a challenge this week and solved it and overcome it through whatever technique they've used, I'd love to hear kind of what you guys are experiencing.
I believe Professor Rubenstein also has something.
Hi, yes. My question was related to polling. I was just wondering how I could get training on how to use the polling and how to make that happen.
Absolutely. I would definitely schedule an appointment with the Office of Information Technology through the Tech Events website, because they are the experts on this. I know we can do polling. If anyone wants to do a quick poll and put a check mark to their name, as the facilitator or panelist on this discussion, I can see how many have put a check mark or an X next to their name. Using that polling feature, but I would definitely recommend an appointment with OIT, because I don't know if there are any particular guides out there right now specifically on those polling options. But I think having just in WebEx training, what we're in now, having the yes, no feature. So if you go into your panel, participants panel, there should be after your hand raised, there's a green check and a red X. And that's just a really quick way to check for understanding. So Is everyone, clear on animal surgery? Does everyone understand that concept? Everyone check next to their name. And then it kind of gives you that cue to move forward. Because I know maybe we're used to seeing those faces, like, or, and then the green and the red polling features are the digital way of that.
Well, and Zoom has essentially the same things that you see in here, and it's right underneath the participants panel. And then as the host for the Zoom meeting, once you take that poll, then you have the option of canceling it out so that you can ask the next question.
I believe Dr. Papani also had something.
Oh, I was just going to say for the polling, you get a polling report, and when I pulled the polling report, I noticed that not all of the responses had recorded, but I'm assuming that that's something that I did incorrectly. And as a matter of fact, that same link that you put in the chat box, I actually already had that up on my computer to look at, just to be sure that I was doing the polling correctly. But in terms of uploading the polling questions, when you set up a meeting in Zoom, there's a link that you can download the CSV template. You can select the template, and then you can upload the template right from that Zoom link. And you can also look at your participation or your attendance report. So I'm anticipating that this will work very well for me. I'm just sort of working out the kinks because this is my first time doing it. So, and then for those students who can't attend live, again, we're trying to be flexible. So if they can show me, if they can get me a letter from their employer on the employer's letterhead, then I will give them an alternative assignment, like just answering, a quick short response question, and that will be in lieu of their, is how they earn participation points in lieu of the in-class polls.
Dr. Sabatini, you should be unmuted.
Hi, everyone. So I wanted to share one of my challenges I had last week. I have a large class with 350 students, and it's live, and I try to do group work with them. So I use Zoom break rooms for that, and I had 10 assistants that were able to help me, and but it was still quite time consuming, and it was interesting. The students appreciated the ability to do a small group work in such a large class, so that was positive. But the setup of the actual break rooms took a long time, so that was something that we're still working on, and we're gonna try to see if we can improve on that. I don't know if you have any thoughts about that.
Yeah, and I'm going to be trying the specific breakout rooms this next time. With that large a class size, it might be beneficial to set up smaller group sessions at a different time, like Dr. Vaughn had recommended to us a while back. But the breakout room that I did this past week was just simply a random one. But I am gonna, I'll get back to you to see how it goes to set up specific ones, because that's going to be coming up this coming week. But thank you all for sharing. Obviously, we all have a lot of things that we're working through, and we truly appreciate your willingness to share with everyone, because that's what helps all of us. Thank you so much for joining us today.